elected. At this very moment, a conversation about you is taking place that you aren't even aware of. Someone is sitting across from another person, exasperated beyond belief, uttering these exact words. They don't care about anyone at all now. But here is the plot twist that will shatter everything you thought you knew about your own transformation. This isn't the story of how you became cold. It's the story of how you became untouchable. It's the story of how the universe orchestrated your apparent indifference as the ultimate weapon against forces designed to keep you small. And by the end of this revelation, you will understand that every person who complains about your coldness is actually a character in a divine script written specifically to forge you into the spiritual warrior you were always destined to become. Right now, as these words hit your consciousness, there are people analyzing your silence as if it were a riddle to be solved. They are dissecting the absence of your drama like archaeologists examining ancient ruins. They are trying to decode the mystery of how someone who cared so deeply about everything and everyone suddenly developed what seems to be a supernatural immunity to their chaos. But what they don't realize, what they cannot realize, is that your transformation wasn't random. It wasn't even your choice. It was a cosmic intervention disguised as emotional evolution, and every moment that led you to this point was orchestrated by forces beyond their understanding. Let me depict what is truly happening behind the scenes. There are group chats buzzing with your name. There are phone calls where your behavior is analyzed as if you were a psychological phenomenon. There are people telling stories about how you used to be so caring, so available, so invested in everyone's problems, and now you've become this untouchable entity who seems to have developed an immunity to their emotional manipulation. But here is what is building in the background that they cannot yet see. This is only the beginning of a revelation that will completely reshape how they understand power, boundaries, and spiritual warfare. The first clue that a larger phenomenon was occurring appeared when you stopped responding to certain people with the same urgency as before. It probably seemed like nothing at the time, just a delayed reply, just a moment where you prioritize something else, just a brief pause before diving back into someone else's emergency. But that pause was the universe testing if you were ready for the next level of your spiritual evolution. That pause was your consciousness learning to protect itself. That pause was the first crack in the dam that would soon release a flood of divine boundaries. What you didn't realize at the time was that you were entering what spiritual warriors call hustle mode, a period where the universe demands laser focus on your mission. Results were beginning to manifest, but required you to ignore distractions. As the sage says, while you were focused on that frequency of success, the people accustomed to unlimited access to your time were experiencing withdrawal symptoms. Then came the second sign. People began to notice you weren't checking in on them like before. The daily texts stopped. The regular calls became irregular. Your emotional availability became selective rather than automatic. And this is where the story gets interesting, because the people who noticed it weren't the ones who reciprocated that energy. It wasn't the one who checked in on you. It was the energy vampires who had become addicted to your attention. And suddenly, their supply was cut off without warning or explanation. But here is where the plot thickens in a way they never anticipated. While they were busy creating narratives about your coldness, you were actually going through your own inner transformation that had nothing to do with them. You developed an immunity to love bombing that is absolutely supernatural. You remember those people who showered you with praise and attention when they needed something, then disappeared once they got what they wanted? Your new spiritual system can detect these patterns before they even fully form. They are also discovering that their attempts to insult you or provoke negative reactions are equally ineffective. You have learned to absorb their attempts at emotional terrorism and continue toward your goals without losing rhythm. This isn't insensitivity, it's mastery. Now, here is where the narrative takes a turn none of them saw coming. While they were busy complaining about your apparent indifference, something else was happening in your life that they couldn't see. You were entering what spiritual warriors call the season of hustle, a period of intense concentration where the universe demands you eliminate every distraction not aligned with your highest purpose. You weren't becoming cold, you were becoming hyper-focused. You weren't losing your heart, You were learning to protect it from those who would exploit its generosity. The most fascinating part of your transformation is how you became absolutely indecipherable to the people who thought they had you figured out. There are individuals literally trying to decode your social media posts as if they were ancient hieroglyphics, seeking hidden meanings that simply don't exist. They are convinced your silence is about them, that your posts are directed at them, that every one of your movements is somehow related to your past with them. Meanwhile, there is someone from your past trying to convince others that you are somewhere heartbroken, that you post less because you are upset, that your apparent peace is just a facade hiding pain. But there is always someone in these conversations who brings them back to reality. I think they're just living their life. Not everything is about you. The truth they cannot accept is even more powerful than their illusions. Some of you are actually in new relationships, building new connections, or simply savoring the peace that comes with removing toxic people from your environment. Your glow has nothing to do with them. It's you finally having the space to flourish without their negative energy draining your light. People talk about your transformation without understanding they are witnessing the birth of someone who learned to value their energy more than others' comfort with unlimited access to that energy. They see someone who developed what seems to be a supernatural ability to remain unmoved by drama, manipulation, and emotional terrorism. What they call coldness is actually a spiritual upgrade that most people never reach because they are too addicted to being liked, too desperate to be understood, too afraid of being called selfish, naturally attracting secret admirers while repelling the wrong people. The very traits they criticize, your selectivity, your boundaries, your refusal to engage in drama, are magnetic to individuals who vibrate at your new frequency. People who value peace are drawn to your peaceful energy. People who respect boundaries are attracted to your ability to set them. People who understand the importance of protecting their energy recognize and appreciate your energy management skills. There is even someone in your circle right now watching your transformation with admiration rather than criticism. While others complain about your coldness, this person is thinking how attractive your self-respect is. While others call you difficult, this person recognizes your standards as exactly what they've been looking for. The very qualities that push the wrong people away draw the right ones closer. Meanwhile, the people upset by your boundaries have inadvertently started advertising your immunity to manipulation. Every story they tell about your coldness is actually a testimony to your strength. Every complaint about your indifference is proof of your spiritual evolution. They think they are damaging your reputation, but they are actually creating a reputation that attracts people looking for someone who cannot be manipulated, controlled, or emotionally derailed. But something even more powerful is happening that they are completely blind to. You are. This is where the story becomes particularly satisfying. Some of these people are starting to realize their campaign against your character is backfiring. The more they talk about your change, the more people become curious about what kind of transformation could provoke such a strong reaction. The more they highlight your indifference to their drama, the more that indifference becomes attractive to those tired of drama creators. And here is what is building toward a revelation that will break their entire narrative. While they invested time and energy talking about you, analyzing you, and trying to understand your transformation, you were busy building something that will make all their opinions totally insignificant. Success has a way of silencing critics, and the universe is preparing to reward your spiritual discipline with tangible evidence that choosing peace over popularity was the right decision. Now, here is the twist they never anticipated. Every person complaining about your indifference is about to discover that your absence from their chaos has consequences they never considered. The drama they used to bring you is now their sole responsibility to manage. The emotional regulation they expected from you is now something they must learn for themselves. The support system they took for granted is now a void they must learn to fill. There is a specific person in this story, let's call them the catalyst, who played a crucial role in pushing you to this point of divine detachment. This person thought they could use emotional manipulation, silence, or withdrawal of attention to control your behavior. They thought they could train you to chase them, beg for their approval, fight for your place in their life. They had no idea they were actually training you to become comfortable with their absence. The catalyst is particularly triggered right now because their strategy backfired in a way they never imagined possible. They expected you to crack under the pressure of their disapproval. They anticipated you would eventually break down and come crawling back, ready to accept less than you deserve just to restore peace. Instead, you did something that completely shattered their understanding of how this game was supposed to be played. You accepted their withdrawal as a gift and used it as an opportunity to level up. While the catalyst was busy trying to punish you with their absence, you were discovering how peaceful life could be without their constant need for drama and attention. While they expected you to suffer, you were learning to thrive. While they waited for you to beg for another chance, you were moving forward and building something better. And now they are facing a reality they never prepared for. You genuinely don't need them anymore. Here is where the story reveals another layer that makes your transformation even more powerful. You have developed the capacity to make difficult decisions that most people lack the courage to make. Some of you are literally in leadership positions where you had to cut ties with people for professional reasons. Perhaps someone was costing your business money, creating workplace drama, or undermining team productivity. You made the executive decision that many leaders are too weak to make, prioritizing the health of your organization over someone's feelings about their accountability. This is where your reputation for being ruthless actually serves you. People know you aren't someone who makes empty threats or gives unlimited chances. When you set a boundary, they understand it's non-negotiable. When you make a decision, they recognize it's final. This level of decisiveness is rare in a world full of people who compromise their standards to avoid conflict. And it has created a respect for your authority that goes deeper than their complaints about your coldness. But the story gets even more complex because the catalyst doesn't work alone. There is an entire network of people who benefited from your previous pattern of putting everyone else's needs before your own. These are the people accustomed to having unlimited access to your time, energy, and resources without having to reciprocate. These are the ones who treated your kindness as weakness and your availability as an obligation. And they are all starting to panic as they realize their free ride is over. What makes this particularly interesting is how your transformation has exposed the difference between people who genuinely care about you and those who only cared about what you could provide for them. Those upset by your boundaries reveal their true motivation. They aren't mourning the loss of your friendship. They are mourning the loss of your services. They aren't hurt by your absence. They are inconvenienced by the lack of access to what you gave them that they can't easily replace. There is someone in this network constantly trying to convince others that you used them in some way. But this narrative collapses under scrutiny because you were the one with things happening. You were the one with skills, connections, resources, and opportunities. If anything, you slowed down to help people who were struggling to keep up. And they want to rewrite that generosity as exploitation because it makes them feel better about losing access to it. The most revealing aspect of their complaints is how they expose their own character. They are essentially admitting they were only in relationship with you for what they could extract from your presence in their life. The moment you stopped being useful in the way they expected, they started attacking your character. That tells you everything you need to know about what they truly valued in your connection. What makes this story truly fascinating is how your transformation has created a ripple effect that exposes the true nature of every relationship in your life. The people upset by your boundaries reveal they preferred you when you had none. Those complaining about your selectivity admit they benefited from your lack of discernment. Those calling you cold confess they were used to being able to manipulate your emotions whenever it served their interests. A clear pattern emerges in how people react to your evolution, and it reveals everything about their character. The secure, healthy people in your life either celebrate your growth or simply accept it without drama. They understand that boundaries are healthy, that protecting your peace is wise, that being selective with your energy is mature. They aren't threatened by your transformation because they weren't dependent on your dysfunction to meet their needs. And then there are the others, the ones having emotional meltdowns about your coldness, desperately trying to pull you back into old patterns, creating elaborate theories about your motivations. These people reveal they were never truly invested in your well-being. They were invested in your availability. They didn't care about your happiness. They cared about your usefulness to them. What is particularly revealing is how they try to manipulate you about your own transformation. They tell you you're different now, that you've changed, that you're not the person you used to be, as if change is inherently bad. They try to convince you your boundaries are excessive, your standards are too high, your peace is somehow selfish. This is the language of people who benefited from your lack of boundaries and are now forced to face the consequences of having mistreated you. There is a particular conversation happening right now where someone is trying to convince others that you've become arrogant, that success has changed you, that you've forgotten where you came from. But there is another person in this conversation, let's call them the truth teller, who constantly interrupts their narrative with reality checks. I don't think they care what you're saying about them, the truth teller points out. I think they're just living their life. And this simple observation drives the complainers absolutely crazy because it highlights the pointlessness of their entire campaign against your peace. The truth teller represents something crucial in this story. There are people who understand what you've become and respect it. There are observers who recognize that your apparent indifference is actually strength, that your selectivity is actually wisdom, that your boundaries are actually self-respect in action. These people aren't threatened by your evolution because they are secure enough in themselves to appreciate it. Here is what is building toward a major revelation. The truth teller has private conversations with other people who know you, and they share a completely different perspective from the complainer's narrative. They talk about how you've become focused, productive, peaceful. They notice you're busy in the best way possible, not stressed or overwhelmed, but intentionally engaged with things that truly matter to you. This alternative narrative is spreading quietly while the complainers make noise, and it creates a contrast that makes the complainers seem increasingly petty and obsessive. While they analyze your every move, looking for signs that you're secretly miserable without them, the truth teller highlights evidence that you're thriving precisely because you removed their drama from your life. Meanwhile, there are other people so obsessed with your transformation that they create elaborate theories about your motivations. They analyze your social media posts looking for hidden meanings. They interpret every action or lack of action as if you're sending them coded messages. They are so convinced everything you do is about them that they can't see the obvious truth. You have simply moved on with your life. Now here is the revelation that changes everything. Your journey to this point of divine indifference was never about becoming cold or heartless. It was about developing a spiritual immunity to emotional manipulation. Every person who pushed you to this point was actually a cosmic coach, teaching you to become unshakable in your sense of self-worth. The universe put you through an intensive course in spiritual warfare disguised as relational drama. Every energy vampire who drained you taught you to value your energy. Every manipulator who tried to guilt-trip you taught you to trust your intuition over their narrative. Every person who treated your kindness as weakness taught you to be strategic with your compassion. Every situation that made you doubt your own sanity taught you to rely on your inner knowing rather than external validation. And now, you have reached a level of awareness where you can see the game being played around you without feeling compelled to participate. You can observe people's manipulation attempts without becoming emotionally derailed. You can witness drama unfolding without feeling responsible to fix it. You can hear criticism without automatically assuming it must be true. This is what mastery looks like, and it is terrifying for people still trapped in cycles of codependency and people-pleasing. The catalyst is about to make their final move in this cosmic chess game, but they don't realize they are already in checkmate. They are planning a grand gesture, a dramatic attempt to force you back into their orbit. Maybe it will be a fake emergency. Maybe it will be a reconciliation attempt that's really just another manipulation tactic. Maybe it will be a public attack designed to damage your reputation. But whatever it is, they are about to discover you have become immune to their entire repertoire. This is the moment where everything comes together in a revelation that reshapes the entire story. The catalyst makes their move, expecting the old version of you to react with predictable patterns of guilt, fear, or anger. Instead, they encounter something they never anticipated: complete and total indifference. Not the kind of indifference that's trying to prove something. Not the kind that hides hurt feelings, but an authentic indifference born from the recognition that their opinion of you is irrelevant to your life's mission. The response they get, or more accurately, the lack of response, shatters their entire understanding of their power over you. They realize all their strategies, all their manipulation tactics, all their attempts to make you feel guilty, sorry, or responsible for their emotions bounce off you like arrows off armor. They are forced to confront the fact they no longer have the ability to disrupt your peace, and this realization drives them to escalate their behavior in increasingly desperate ways. The more dramatic they become, the more obvious it is to everyone watching that they are the problem, not you. The more they try to convince others you are cold and heartless, the more people start to wonder why they're so obsessed with someone who supposedly doesn't matter to them. The more energy they invest trying to get your attention, the more apparent it becomes that they are the ones who can't let go. Meanwhile, something beautiful is happening in your life that serves as the ultimate contrast to their chaos. Opportunities are opening that couldn't have existed while you were still entangled in their drama. People are showing up who appreciate your energy instead of trying to drain it. Situations are aligning that require exactly the level of focus and emotional stability you developed through this process. The universe is rewarding your spiritual discipline with tangible evidence that you made the right choices. The people who complained about your coldness are beginning to feel the consequences of their own actions. The energy they invested in criticizing you instead of improving themselves is beginning to manifest as stagnation in their own lives. The drama they tried to impose on you is beginning to consume them instead. The chaos they created in your life is returning to them amplified. The truth teller in these conversations is beginning to speak more boldly, pointing out patterns everyone was too invested in the drama to notice. Have you ever considered, they say, that maybe they're not responding because they're too busy building something incredible? Have you thought about the fact that their silence might be protecting them precisely from this kind of negativity? What if their indifference isn't cruelty? What if it's wisdom? And this is where the entire narrative flips. The people who position themselves as victims of your coldness are forced to confront the possibility that they were actually obstacles to your growth. Those who claimed you used them must face the fact that they were trying to use you. Those who said you didn't care about them must acknowledge they never really cared about your well-being either. They only cared about what you could do for them. But the most powerful revelation happens within you. You realize your journey to this point of divine indifference wasn't a descent into coldness. It was an ascent into clarity. You weren't losing your humanity. You were discovering your divinity. You weren't becoming heartless. You were learning to use your heart strategically rather than recklessly. Every person who complained about your transformation was actually testifying to your power without realizing it. The same people who call you cold are now secretly watching your life unfold with a mixture of admiration and envy. They see the peace you've created, the success you're building, the healthy relationships you're cultivating, and they're beginning to understand what they lost when they pushed you away. The catalyst faces a moment of truth where they must choose between continuing their campaign against your peace or accepting reality and moving on with their life. Most people in their position choose to persist in their illusions rather than face the truth about their own behavior. But a rare few experience genuine awakening. Either way, their choice no longer has the power to affect your trajectory because you have become immune to their influence. There is something poetic in how the story resolves. The very people who pushed you to develop divine indifference become the first witnesses to its power. They created the conditions that forced you to evolve beyond their ability to manipulate. And now, they're stuck dealing with someone who has transcended the game they were trying to play. They wanted to see you broken, and instead they see you unbreakable. The conversations about your coldness are beginning to change as people start to recognize that what they interpreted as lack of care was actually the highest form of self-care. Your boundaries weren't walls to keep people out. They were filters ensuring only the right energy could reach you. Your selectivity wasn't arrogance. It was wisdom choosing quality over quantity in every area of your life. You remember that conversation we talked about at the beginning? Someone sitting across from another person, frustrated beyond imagination, saying, They don't care about anyone at all now. That conversation is still happening. But now there's a new participant. Someone who understands what you've become and isn't threatened by it. Perhaps this new voice suggests that the problem isn't that you don't care. Perhaps the problem is they got used to you caring more about them than you did about yourself. Perhaps what they call coldness is actually what healthy boundaries look like. Perhaps what they call indifference is actually what self-respect looks like when it finally finds its voice. The original complainers don't want to hear this perspective because it forces them to examine their own behaviors, their own sense of entitlement, their own inability to function without someone else managing their emotions. But the seed of truth has been planted, and truth has a way of growing even in hostile soil. Meanwhile, you are living in the reality this entire journey was designed to create. You have become someone who can love deeply without getting lost. You can support others without depleting yourself. You can maintain relationships without sacrificing your peace. You can care about people without making their problems your emergency. You have achieved the seemingly impossible balance between compassion and self-preservation. The people who still complain about your transformation are becoming increasingly insignificant to your story. They are stuck in the past, trying to figure out why you changed, while you are focused on the future you're building with your newfound freedom. They are invested in maintaining narratives about who you were, while you are busy becoming who you were always destined to be. The ultimate truth emerging from this entire saga is that your journey toward divine indifference was never really about the people who pushed you to this point. They were just supporting characters in a story that was always about your spiritual evolution. They served their purpose by creating the conditions that forced you to choose between maintaining false peace through self-sacrifice or creating authentic peace through healthy boundaries. Every person who complained about your coldness was actually a mirror, showing you patterns you needed to break. Every situation that made you doubt your caring nature was actually a test to see if you were ready to care for yourself with the same intensity you cared for others. Every moment of apparent indifference was actually a moment of profound self-awareness disguised as emotional detachment. The conversations about you not caring anymore will continue for a while, but they are already losing their power because the people having them are starting to realize that their opinions about your boundaries are irrelevant to your life. You have created a reality where others' approval is nice to have, but not necessary for your peace. You have built an existence where others' understanding of your choices is welcome, but not required for your confidence. This is what victory in spiritual warfare looks like. Not the defeat of your enemies, but the transcendence of their ability to affect your inner state. Not the silencing of critics, but the development of immunity to their impact. Not the elimination of drama from your environment, but the cultivation of a peace that remains unshakable no matter what happens around you. The elected ones who recognize themselves in this story are those who have learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is to refuse to enable someone else's dysfunction. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do is to stop caring about people who have demonstrated they don't truly care about you. Sometimes the path to genuine compassion passes through a period of apparent coldness that is actually spiritual purification in disguise. Your journey to this point of divine indifference has endowed you with powers most people never develop. The ability to remain calm in chaos, the strength to maintain boundaries under pressure, the wisdom to distinguish between authentic need and manipulative demand, the discernment to recognize when someone's presence in your life costs more than it benefits. The people talking about your indifference are actually creating a testimony of your transformation that will inspire other elected ones ready to make similar changes in their own lives. They are inadvertently advertising your immunity to their manipulation, your freedom from their approval, your independence from their validation. They become unwilling evangelists for the power of healthy boundaries and spiritual self-respect. This is your elected story. This is how the universe forged you into someone who could love without getting lost, care without being depleted, and maintain peace without compromise. The people who pushed you to this point of divine indifference gave you the greatest gift they could give, even though they never intended it as a gift. They forced you to discover that your worth never depended on their approval. Your peace was never conditioned by their presence. and your power was always independent of their permission. Continue to protect that peace. Continue to maintain those boundaries. Continue to honor that divine indifference that looks like coldness to those who benefited from your lack of limits. You have become exactly who you needed to become. And the universe is about to show you why every moment of this journey was absolutely necessary for what comes next in your story.